Council meeting of July 11th, 2023. It is now 8:35. Okay, we're going to move on to ordinances. This is a public hearing and a second reading. The city clerk will now read ordinance 23-19.
This is an ordinance to amend and supplement Chapter 3 titled Administrative Code, Article 4, Section 3-21, Municipal Housing Liaison and Administrative Agent.
Okay, we are going to be going through a series of 3 ordinances that deal with affordable housing. I think it would be helpful if we would have Mr. Hoffman describe the ordinance first. Directly after that, we're going to have a public hearing, which means everyone will have a chance, everyone in the audience will have a chance to comment on the ordinance. Bob, would you, this is ordinance 23-19. Yancy, would you mind reading that, please? Well, okay. All right. Hopefully you were listening when Yancy read it. Bob, you want to explain this?
Certainly, Council President, and what will happen is tonight it'll be a tag team explanation of myself and then our city attorney, Mr. Cool. So there are 3 ordinances that are on tonight. There will be a public hearing, but the council will not take any action on these ordinances. They will be they will be held, and the ordinances will be referred to the planning board, and the planning board will review the ordinances, and then they will comment on the ordinances in written form to the council at a later date. And the projected date is August 9th?
July 25th.
Or July 25th.
It's July 25th.
I apologize for that. So, so the first ordinance is to hire it's for a housing liaison and an administrative agent. So this is basically the procedures that would be used to vet people for affordable housing, and it also outlines the different positions that are required and how some of that vetting will take place. So that's the short version. Mr. Cool, what would you like to add?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that the appointment of an administrative agent is really a function that every municipality is going through. The administrative agent is often a third-party entity that their sole purpose is they receive applications for potential affordable housing candidates. They process that, vet them, and then they implement our affordable housing regulations as we move forward to ensure our compliance. Again, this is something that is standard across nearly every municipality in the state that has had to endure this affordable housing litigation.
And Mr. Cool, I misspoke before. This is because this is not land use related specifically, so this is a public hearing, and then there's going to be action taken tonight on this particular one, and the others are being referred to the planning board.
That's correct. Yeah, this is part of our administrative code. This is not part of our land use ordinance.
All right, so we're now ready. Yes, Charles?
So, what I'd like to have Mr. Poole, since he's here tonight, explain to the public, because I think sometimes it gets twisted. Affordable housing and low-income housing. And the difference in that, because I think sometimes people think it's one and the same, and I just want to make sure it's clear what we're doing tonight.
Yeah, so what we're dealing with, the administrative agent deals with affordable housing, and that's through the COA program. And what these are state mandated obligations for us to provide opportunities for housing. They get put into a lottery, and that lottery, you can apply for that. There's no residency preference, and that's a state mandate. That is not something that we get to control, unfortunately. This is only for new developments as well. This does not affect any current residents or current housing obligations that we have throughout the city. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, but you didn't answer that. Low
And-
income.
All right, if I could also add, 3 years ago, the there, actually, it's published every year, but, and then it's updated, but basically, affordable housing in North Jersey 3 years ago equaled 86% of the median income for different municipalities, and there was a factor for each county. So affordable housing could conceivably be, for a family of four, it could be up to $100,000. That would be the amount of money that would be considered, if you earn that, you would be eligible for affordable housing. It depends on the number of family members as well. Low-income housing is more based on federal guidelines, and it takes into account other, other federal programs and things like that. So it's at a much lower level.
But it's also salary driven too.
Correct. Yeah.
Salary driven.
Yes.
That's where it's income driven, that's where it is.
Yeah.
If I
So
may-
what you're saying is that low
One is-
income
go ahead.
is not equivalent to affordable housing,
Correct. It's two different things.
two different things.
Yes.
If I may, Madam Chair, Councilman at Large is also talking about the ordinance 2319, and on the third page, it describes of the affirmative marketing package, which is also to include gross income for very low and low to moderate income. And oftentimes, when affordable housing is spoke about, that verbiage is left out. And so people don't always identify with affordable housing to moderate or to low income. It's here in the ordinance, and I think what we're saying is we just like to see that come to fruition. Oftentimes it doesn't, especially with new footprints in our city.
Thank you.
I have a question. So you said tonight we're going to take action on 2319, but not on 2320 and not on 2321?
Correct.
Okay, and Mr. Cool, I have a question for you on 2320.
Well, if, Councilwoman, if we could wait till we have the hearing of that.
Public hearing.
Oh, I can't ask a question on it?
No, but after the public hearing is
Okay.
finished,
Thank
okay?
you.
Because we are going to vote on this.
No, we're not voting on
We're
23.
voting on 2319,
This is what the public hearing is now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
okay?
Got it.
Yes. This is on the administrative agent. Right now, we're opening up the public part of the meeting. On this one, on ordinance 23-19, this is for the agent, the hiring of the agent. If you have something to say or a question, comment, please come to the microphone. We need your name and your address. You have 3 minutes. Is anybody interested in speaking? Yes?
Speak into the microphone.
Hi.
Lynn James, 87 Matlash Place. What's the requirements or the stipulations for who that person is? Like, what requirements do they need to have to be hired? And how do you know, how to get this job? Because
Yeah,
is it a job requirement, and does that person have to be a resident of Englewood?
They do not. There are a number of semi-private organizations that have become administrative agents as it's become somewhat of a boutique industry that certain companies have signed on to administer affordable housing. And it's through a interview process, and the city has, I believe Mr. Hoffman has.
So it's not an individual, it's a company?
There will be one individual assigned to do that, but there are several companies that have advertised or now work to provide these kind of services.
And then who makes the decision to hire that person? Is it this body, or?
Yes, it is. It's the governing body.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, Rick Wilby, Englewood, New Jersey. Yeah, I need this question answered. Is this guy going to be related to anybody that we know? Anybody's cousin? He's going to be Judy's nephew or something? Can you tell me? I need an answer.
Go ahead.
The answer is there are specific companies that the city's interviewing that have done this before, that have a track record, and it has to be approved by the court. So
Yeah, I know that, but is he going to be somebody's nephew? Is he going to be like Lisa's cousin or Michael's uncle or Ken's aunt? You know, maybe he could be Kevin's brother. I don't know. You may be related to anybody?
The answer is,
Yes or no?
the answer is no. Most
Oh,
of the
okay.
companies that
That's
were-
all. That's it. That's it.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else have anything to add?
Say my 6-year-old nephew wants to play.
Would any, this is all new, it's new to us, you know, and this is being, this is all growing out of the court case. And as I say, we're feeling our way along, we're trying to share as much of this as we can with you. There's a lot to be filled in. Okay, is there anyone on the council? I'm going to close the public part of this. Is there anyone on the council that would like to comment? Okay, Yancy, roll call.
We need a motion and second.
Okay, we need a motion.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Kevin seconded. Okay, roll call.
Councilman Kopp?
Yes.
Councilman Rosenzweig?
Yes.
Councilman Wilson?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wasatski?
Yes.
Council President Marin?
Yes. All right, we're now moving on to ordinance 2320. I would just like to preface this with saying that this ordinance is going to be tabled until the July 25th meeting. However, we're not going to have we will have the public hearing on this, but it will be tabled. We will not be voting on it. Go ahead, Yancy. You want to read the title?
This is an ordinance to amend and supplement Chapter 250 titled Land Use, Section 250-126, Affordable Housing Development Fees.
Bob and Levi, do you want to comment on this?
Yes, thank you, Council President. We'll let the attorney go first, and then I'll do the color on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, if you have the ordinance or if you've reviewed it, the statements that precurse the ordinance, the actual text of the ordinance, are pretty important. And it kind of summarizes what this is. The purposes of this section is to establish standards for the collection, maintenance, and expenditure of development fees pursuant to COA's rules developed in response to the statutory scheme and statewide non-residential development fee act. These fees are collected as a function of statute, and these are for new residential developments and non-residential developments. So a commercial building does have to provide a expenditure towards the municipality to provide affordable housing going forward. This establishes the percentage of fees that they are obligated to pay. This is a state mandated percentage. We do not have a discretion in how much it is, but what it does is it brings somebody from the outside and requires them to contribute to the municipality. So if you have a corporation that comes in and they don't have any residents, they still have to contribute to the benefit of the city of Englewood to provide fees for affordable housing. And this is really just the structural, the statutory scheme put into a codified ordinance that requires them to provide those fees.
Right, and then the fees are generally 2.5% of the equalized assessed value of the property. So that 2.5% gets contributed to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. There's also a section, and these fees have been the same, but if residents make improvements to their house and the improvements to the house increase the value of the house by over 50%, then they have to make a contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. If the increase in the value of the house is under 50%, they do not have to do that. So.
Is it also 2.5% for people who make individual improvements where it's 50% greater in value?
Yes,
It's
it
the
is.
Same scheme. So it's not just for developers, it's for private residential owners as well.
Right.
Yes.
No, the
No, I'm
two
sorry.
percentages are different.
Yeah, it's 1.5%, sorry.
It's 1.5 for residents and 2.5 for developers.
Right.
So the
Mine says
comment
the
I
same.
wanted to make before was I think that what's happening now, right, people are getting that assessment after on their tax bill, is that correct?
I'm sorry, can you restate that?
People now, if they're doing a renovation, then they're going to get this assessment, it comes on their tax bill, is that correct?
You'd get a separate bill for your COA
Right.
development fee.
So I just wanted to make a recommendation. Mr. Hoffman, because people, I think, have been getting this, and they don't know what it is. And so I think that it should be put on the city website, because if you look at, I was looking at it today, Berkeley Heights, New Jersey, they have they have a whole site, you know, explaining the history and the fees and, you know, the ordinances. It's, you know, click through, which I think is very helpful.
Okay.
Okay, so that's Berkeley Heights, New Jersey.
Okay. Does anyone else have any comment on
Yeah,
this?
I do want to just add one, I think, important caveat. There are some exceptions to this. If your house is destroyed by fire or natural disaster, to rebuild that house does not trigger this. It's only for an expansion of an existing residence or a new development. So this is not going to penalize somebody that has either a fire or any flooding.
Okay.
But-
Charles?
I'm sorry,
I think Char-
when you're finished, I'll wait.
Levi, one thing I think we need to tie back to this affordable housing is that ordinance that myself and Councilman Hamer worked on, where it triggers when a new development comes in and they have to commit to so many units.
Yes,
You know.
that is, that's separately codified in I believe, the next ordinance. It does disclose what their obligation is for
Right.
20% set aside.
20% set
Yeah.
aside, so they're just not gonna come in here and build whatever they wanna build anymore.
No, it's a mandatory set aside ordinance, and that is included in our next ordinance that we're gonna be reviewing.
But we've already got that in place already.
We do.
That's
And we
true.
also have this development ordinance. This really just updates the percentages
Yep.
to ensure that we're getting the maximum amount from developers, as I said, that come from out of town, that they have to contribute as much as we can possibly take from them.
Thank you.
That doesn't.
Go ahead, Michael.
I'm
You-
sorry.
No, it's okay. So my question on this ordinance, number 23-20, it will put a chilling effect on people wanting to make improvements in their own home, where they may stage improvements over time to avoid the 1.5% surcharge, correct?
Yes.
It's possible. But again,
So-
this is really a statutory scheme. I understand the question. This is not really a
I understand the
permissive, yeah.
statutory scheme, but how is this supposed to be enforced? If a person increases their value in one season and does something, and then the next year does something, and over a time, it's now done 50%, but they've paced it so that, are we going to be keeping records at code enforcement as to the improvements and everything? How are we going to enforce this?
That's a good question.
Pardon?
You gotta take out permits.
No, I understand that. What if people don't take out the permits?
Because of this.
Because of this. In other words, fundamentally, and I want the governing body to think about this, as I will once, if it is passed, whether or not I really want to sign it. People are going to, we usually have the permits there to protect people from unscrupulous technicians, electricians. We protect people from contractors. This is going to encourage people to do things ultra-virus through our system. How do we protect against that? In other words, these are state mandates, Mr. Cool. We have to implement these percentages by state statute and set up a scheme. But in the end, it's going to be up to the city of Englewood to enforce this. Is there any hedging, or is there any pacing enforcement that the governing body can put in? Or any language? Are we permitted to add language that if it's found over the course of a year that somebody has made these improvements in the aggregate, then we reserve the right to do it retroactively?
Ultimately, I believe that that's an issue to be developed with the legislator, the state legislator. These are very standardized ordinances that are approved by special masters throughout the state. They've drafted these. The Fair Share Housing Center has drafted and blessed these. I think you make a good point. Why not do 45% one year and 10% the next year? I don't think that's been addressed by the legislator, and that's really where the guidance in.
So why should the city be forced to pass an ordinance where there's a gap going into it? We have a good system right now. I know we want to create a reservoir of funding. Could we accept to do this for developers that come in rather than private residents that are making improvements in their homes? Or you have to do both?
You have to do both.
What are
And-
the consequences of not passing this?
There's a potential that we do not resolve or settle our litigation in accordance with Fair Share Housing Center. We could lose our immunity from Bill DeSorme's lawsuits, and you will see a myriad of lawsuits being filed the next day from developers seeking to build extremely high density throughout the city without recourse or without control of this governing body or the planning board.
Yeah, we'll lose control of our own zoning.
Even though this language becomes somewhat confusing because it states at one point that the contractors come in at 2.5%. And then it follows to say, if they get a certificate of occupancy, it decreases, and as opposed to 2.5, it becomes 1%. So once we grant a developer permission and we give them that occupancy, we lose that 2.5. Is none of that negotiable?
That's, just some clarification, yeah, that's for those projects that have entered into a developer's agreement or redevelopment agreement. That's not for your general application. They have to have a specific developer's agreement that exempts the payment under the non-residential fee. And in that case, there would usually be a pilot, which would provide for an alternative taxing scheme, where the city could also provide that payment or that percentage through that alternative scheme.
No, I understand that part. I'm not a gambler, but if I was to go to a machine and it paid off one time, I'd probably go right back to that same machine.
If I may,
Go ahead.
this must come into conflict with our master plan, which is devised over time based on Englewood's needs. We have organic development or redevelopment that happens on its own. Are we to accept an ordinance like this because of a threat of litigation, and we may lose something, and yet we're going to turn our back on other principles that we have to follow?
Well, in terms of its conflict with the master plan, obviously that's a determination that the planning board makes when they do their review of it. This is just a fee schedule. This does not restrict or limit development. This is just a fee for development. So I don't think, in terms of the goals of master plan, I'm not abundantly familiar with it. But again, that's something that the planning board gets the opportunity to determine and review, and they get to provide their recommendations to this board.
And if the planning board recommends that it not go forward, and the governing body decides not to go forward, then we run the risk of losing control over our development in our city.
Yes.
And this is all by statutory schemes.
This is the state of affordable housing litigation in New Jersey right now. This is the failure of our legislator to reinstate COA or to enact a comprehensive scheme for how to analyze and develop a realistic development potential for each municipality.
I don't know what's worse, honestly. You know, that's what we have to listen, I think, through the public hearings. But we'll have professionals guiding us from the planning board, are there any advocates coming tomorrow to speak to us on behalf of developers so we understand their perspectives?
That was not part of the plan meeting.
Levi, I don't think we have to understand their perspective.
Yeah, we figured that one
It's about
out.
our perspective here in Englewood.
They get a CO, and then their number drops from 2.5% down to 1%.
No, only if they have a redevelopment agreement.
If they have an agreement with the governing body, then they
Yes,
change
if there's a redevelopment
it. But there's
agreement.
still a 1% standard, in other words.
The minimum, if they have a redevelopment agreement, is still 1%. It's
So
two and a
they can't
half.
go beyond it where you defer taxes for 30 years or anything like that?
No.
You're still mandated?
Yep.
Mr. Cool, can
I-
is this pretty I mean, when I had looked this up earlier today, it seems pretty standard across the state.
When I say there's 576 municipalities in New Jersey, I bet 575 of them have this in place.
Right, so
It's-
I don't think we're,
Can I just state what I think is the obvious, that this state, this supersedes any local codes that might be in place?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Just-
and again, just to be clear though, this is already in our zoning code. this ordinance is in our zoning code. This amendment simply updates the percentages by which we can collect, and it increases them so that developers have a higher obligation to pay for affordable housing in the municipality.
Okay. Does anyone else on the council have anything to say? If not, we're going to open up the general session, the public hearing. Once again, name, address. On this ordinance, we're doing one ordinance at a time. This is ordinance 23-20.
Amy Bullock, Howland Avenue. Two things. One, I want to point out that we're here today having this discussion because we neglected to include affordable housing in the development that is already here, like Evo and One William. Had we done the right thing with those projects and asked the developers to include affordable housing units, we might not be having this conversation today. So we're here to pay the piper, thanks to our leadership. I would like, if possible, someone to talk about these fees that are being collected and what that money has to be allocated for and how it can be spent. Thank you.
Al, trustee, 33 Florence Street. This 1%, I mean, you know,
It's
as a
one,
contract.
excuse me, it's 1.5.
Thank you. It's 1.5%.
Oh, it's
Now,
one?
You're throwing it on the backs of homeowners again, as we don't pay enough taxes right now as it is. And let me tell you something else. When you're going about all this, contractors are going to duck and dodge. We don't have enough people go out here and check jobs to make sure. You know, $50,000, you can do a kitchen, $50,000, and you're going to be paying that? Just one kitchen. Just do your kitchen. It's $50,000. People are not going to go get permits. Believe me, they're not. Now that they know, if they get any hint of this, they're not getting any permits. They're going to duck and dodge it. Okay, we're going to have accidents then. Now things get a little hairy because people start to do things on their own, like mess with the gas, the electric. And I know Councilman Wilson, you know, because your contract, you know. And so people are going to duck and dodge this because, again, you're throwing it on their backs. I mean, we could talk about how it got there and all this. They don't want to know all that. All they know is they want to improve your house. And everybody wants to improve their homes in Englewood. It's happening all over, you know? And now we got to pay 1.5%. They're going to duck and dodge, and we don't have enough right here at the building department to go around and catch these people what they're going to be doing because they're not getting permits, not with this. Okay, so better kind of come up with something because it's not going to work. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any comment?
Laura Vogel, Marlborough Road, Englewood, New Jersey. I mean, this is nothing new. This, when you get a permit, right? You get some work done, you get a permit. Then they determine whether or not that, whatever renovation or whatever work you've done would then be an increase in your taxes, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about here. That's already going on, you know, with getting permits. And I have to say, it's not necessarily a beautiful kitchen renovation or adding something, you know, adding rooms onto your home. For instance, I had one of those mini duct systems put in on my first floor. I paid $250 for the permit, and my taxes went up because of it. We're talking about heating and cooling my home, and I got hit with that, and my taxes went up quite a bit from it. And as I said, the permit was $250. So I've been paying that, was it 1%? Based on it, so where was that money going then, that 1%? Because the whole
let me
affordable
just be
housing
abundantly
thing
clear.
is new.
You would not be charged an affordable housing development fee for the installation of an HVAC system unless it increased the value of your house by 50%.
Didn't.
So
But-
then you would have gotten a separate bill for your affordable housing development fee. An increase in taxes is separate and apart from that, and that's
Okay.
that's a substance of, that could either be an increase in the municipal budget, could be increase in the assessment because the value of the house did go up by some percentage. because of that installation. But
Okay,
the
I wanted to be
The
clear then.
1.5% that we're talking about here.
Different.
It's separate and apart. It's not part of your assessment. It's a one-time affordable housing fee.
I see,
And this is in existence again. So I hear everyone,
I
what they're
see.
saying about the impact on potential developers and people getting permits. This already exists. So if it's a problem that now exists, not something new that we
I got you. I
would
wanted
be
to
created by this.
kind of work out the distance, but yeah, I can say that a lot of people do not bother getting permits because they don't want to pay the $250. I won't snitch on my neighbor. She had one put in, didn't get a permit.
So it is. So if you improve your house,
Okay.
1% over its current assessment.
All right, I think there was a question, excuse me, Bob?
No.
I don't want to, well, I want him to answer it first. All right, we'll close the public session. And Bob, could you please answer the question about where this money goes or how it's used? The money in the Affordable Housing Fund?
Sure. Some of the money in the Affordable Housing Fund, after it's collected, it will be used to help renovate other houses in the city. There will be a list of houses that will be eligible for some type of renovation, whether it's a new roof or something like that. There would have to be, then that house would have to be deed restricted for a period of time, so that if the house is sold, whatever the improvement is, it would be used by somebody that met that same affordable housing criteria. So that's part of it. Other items that it would be used for is to would be to help offset some utility costs, such as water and sewer, things of that nature. And Mr. Cool, what else am I missing? I know it goes for administrative fees as well when we have to hire planners and things of that nature, but that's a maximum of 20%.
Absolutely, yeah. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund has to be expended for affordable housing. The municipality can't bank this money. They can't use it for a new truck at the DPW or any other purpose. It has to be utilized for affordable housing. If the municipality doesn't spend it within a certain time frame, it does get reverted to the state. So we are compelled and forced to spend it. So it does come to an actual benefit for the municipality as long as it's expended. So it is it's something that is very finite in terms of its uses, and it will be used for affordable housing within the municipality.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, sure, go ahead.
So since this is not new, we should have a record of how this money has been spent.
Absolutely. There is an Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which is monitored and it's controlled. There is no way that this money could be spent outside of affordable housing besides a 20% for administrative or professional services.
So when we have our city, when we do our city audit, shouldn't that show up in the audit?
I'm not sure if it would show up in the city audit, but these are
It should.
separate.
We're
These are
collecting
audited.
the fees,
Yeah.
so we should
Yeah,
have-
they are audited. And I'm not sure if it shows up in the formal city audit or if it could be separately accounted for, but.
But if we're collecting it, it's on our books and records, we should be able to.
Yeah,
account for it.
absolutely.
That's my point, I wanna be able to account for it and see how it's been distributed.
Absolutely,
that way.
yeah. It's very heavily regulated and controlled and overlooked by Fair Share Housing Center and the courts.
Well, it
Okay.
states that 30% is supposed to assist low to moderate income.
I'm sorry, did you say 30%?
Yes, ma'am, I think I did.
I don't know.
Of the fees, sure.
No, I understand. Okay, once again, we're tabling this ordinance until July 25th so that we could meet tomorrow with the planning board.
Need a motion.
Okay. Can I have a motion to table this?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Roll call?
Councilman Kopp?
Yes.
Councilman Rosenzweig?
Yes.
Councilman Wilson?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wasatski?
Yes.
Council President Marin?
Yes. Okay, we're moving on now. Yancy, would you please read ordinance 23-21?
This is an ordinance to amend and supplement Chapter 250 titled Land Use, Article 17 entitled Affordable Housing.
Okay. Could we have an explanation?
Yeah, so this, again, this is an ordinance that already exists. What the planner has done, our planner has consolidated several different sections within our code to make it more concise and more direct. And this just establishes the process and procedure for providing for affordable housing in the city, including the requirements for developers, as well as maximum rent, sales prices, a mandatory set-aside ordinance, and the control periods for restricted units, the price restrictions, buyer income eligibility, tenant income eligibility, rent restrictions for rental units. And again, this is all state mandated. These are, again, this is something that every municipality has enacted over the last couple of years during this third round of compliance with the constitutional mandate for affordable housing.
Bob, is there anything you want to add to that?
Some of the other issues that we talked about in the previous ordinance, the rehabilitation program for private houses is listed in this ordinance. So it says that the households are eligible for the rehabilitation for a period of 10 years. That's the control period. And then the city winds up budgeting a minimum of $10,000, or actually a minimum of $10,000 for each improvement in the properties. So I had spoken earlier that we had identified approximately 230 properties that were eligible for this, and that was based on a survey that the courts directed us to do, and our code enforcement people and inspectors, they literally drove by and visited every residential property in the city, so that we had to submit a list to the court, and then that's how the list was whittled down. So I want to be specific. They didn't get out of their cars at every single location. They did what's called a windshield survey in many areas, because it's just there are houses that don't need to be rehabilitated, but others do. So we have a list, but that's some of what's in this ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Could you explain, I'm sorry, Mr. Hoffman, what you mean by a controlled period with private houses?
All right, it's on page 18 of
What is that, 30
under
years?
rehabilitation program. It talks about the controlled period. All rehabilitated units shall remain affordable to very low, and moderate income households for a period of 10 years. So if one of those houses is sold within that 10-year period of time, it still has to be within that income level.
Okay. Once again, I'm just stating for your information that we're going to be tabling this. We're not going to be voting on it. However, there is a public hearing on ordinance 23-21. Anyone who would like to comment, please come up to the microphone. We need your name, your address, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Thank you, Council President. My name is Frank Huddle III. I served as mayor of the city from 2010 to 2018. I also was extensively involved in the master plan. I was extensively involved in litigation, surrounded by attorneys, and very familiar with this process. However, before I start my comments, I'd like to ask your council some clarification. Paragraph B of the ordinance states there was a settlement agreement agreed upon, I presume by the council, on November 2nd, 2022. I have not located any public record that this was presented to the public. It then further states that the settlement agreement was presented by the city council and mayor to the court on January 30th, 2023. Number one, does this ordinance, or does this settlement agreement approved by court in January 20th, 2023, is that a final order by the court that the rezoning of this city, this entire city, is now complete?
No, we have to pass the ordinances.
Where's the ordinance that addresses the change of the overlay zones?
I'm not aware of where it is right now. Mr. Hoffman, do you know?
That particular ordinance, there's a copy of the overlay zone on our website, but that ordinance has been introduced, and I believe it's scheduled for adoption at the August 8th meeting.
What is the ordinance number, Mr. Hoffman?
That's ordinance 23-22. It was introduced at the last council meeting on June 27th.
And was there a public hearing on that ordinance?
That'd be at the second reading.
Yeah, August 8th.
Okay, well, number one, with respect to this ordinance and any other further ordinance, I believe procedurally, but I could be incorrect, and council could correct me, and I don't agree with the 3 minutes, is that oh, a minute. That if the ordinance is introduced, I recall the ordinances are then referred to the planning board. The planning board makes comments, review, hires a planner, does extensive analysis, potentially makes changes, then it's returned back to the council, at which time there's a public hearing. Am I incorrect or correct on that?
The public hearing is not required to be after the completeness review. The vote will be after the review, after the 35-day period has
Okay.
lapsed.
So as a mayor and as a lawyer, to promote fair, open, transparency, and good government, reading an ordinance that could be substantially changed by the planning board, this public should have the opportunity to make comments once after the two bodies of our government, the council, the mayor, and the planning board, have an opportunity to weigh in and then have for public comment to be at the planning board and then to the city council. So I am asking the city council, notwithstanding what you just cited as the law, that you have an option to promote the interests to everyone to fully understand this, is to table this and refer it on the introduction to the planning board.
Thank
Just
you.
for a point of
I'm not finished.
clarification.
I'm not finished.
Yeah, but
Yep.
with respect to you, Mayor Huddle, we do have a 3-minute.
Well, then you could take me out, because I believe that when I was mayor for 9 years, and I extended the council meetings for public comment 5 minutes or 10 minutes, to be able to stand here and try to go through a comprehensive ordinance of a person that has some familiarity and be limited to 3 minutes, I take objection to that. You could take whatever you want to do with that. I will say the following. I am repeating, I'd like to have an answer. Will you table this public meeting and refer this ordinance and ordinance 2022 to the planning board, giving the planning board the opportunity to do their job and return it to the council?
Yeah, if I may, Mayor Huddle, just for clarification, these have been referred to the planning board, and they are subject to planning board review. In the event that they have substantial changes, this governing body either has to review and accept those changes, and at that point, there will be a new process. If there are substantial changes to it, you can't adopt it at that time.
Okay.
If there are no substantial changes, or this governing body rejects those proposals, then they can move forward with the vote at that time.
Without a public comment?
There'll still be a public hearing, there'll be public comment during that meeting.
Will there
but
be a public hearing again if the council disregards the planning board's recommendations?
I don't believe so. There's not one required by law.
I'm sorry, but I asked Mr. Hoffman on June 27th how many opportunities there would be public hearings, and I was assured for ordinance 23-22, Mayor, that there were going to be 3 public hearings.
And that's the council's prerogative. If that's the case, then I apologize, I wasn't here at that meeting.
And I don't think
so.
we're bound by any timeline because we're being sued, and if we don't feel that this is something that we can absorb or do properly, we shouldn't be rushed in doing it. But I was told 3 public hearings. Correct?
I'll have to check, but just to make sure, we do have a timeline, because we have to, the city is due to appear before Judge Farrington in August, I believe.
I understand the timeline, but adopting a very sophisticated housing overlay zone without looking at the effect that it has on our master plan, and making one thing better and eliminating litigation could actually make things worse for the developers. I concur with my colleague that we ought to let the planning board look at this, make its recommendations, but there ought to be public input before the planning board and before the governing body.
Excuse me, Michael, I believe we do have a Zoom meeting tomorrow that's combined planning board and council just for that purpose.
I get that. That's number two.
But I don't know
But
if
the third
Mayor
one should
Huddle
be
knew
here
that.
again after that. There
Excuse
should be
me?
another public hearing here.
That, or the
Excuse me?
planning board can have a second meeting on it and have a public hearing
I
then.
was not aware of whether you were aware that the council and the planning board are having a combined meeting tomorrow night via Zoom.
Yeah, I noted that, and I also note that at least when I was mayor, that never did we pass such major, monumental legislation within 24 hours.
If I may, Madam Chair.
It's not being passed tomorrow.
Okay, let me
There's no
finish,
vote.
because
There's no
I'm sure
vote
the council
tomorrow.
president would like me to finish, so I would like to try to get to the point.
And I would like to tell you that as last year, there was a 2-minute. We increased it this year to 3 minutes.
Most respectfully.
Because there was a reason for us doing this.
Okay, let's agree to disagree. Let's agree to disagree.
I think you're right.
Okay, so I want to say a couple things here, because with a stroke of a pen, with this map, which is still unclear to me if we're bound by the court, because I'm reading the ordinance that says the court has already approved the settlement agreement. So if that's the case, we're going through an exercise of futility that this council mayor has already approved the map.
The settlement agreement includes parameters by which the time frame for the city to enact certain ordinances and certain provisions of that settlement agreement.
Does it allow it to revise the map? Exhibit A.
Does the settlement agreement?
Does this public comment and the council and the mayor and the planning board, once they review the map, and I understand the only thing that there is the map, there's no planning done, can that map be revised? Can the overlay zones be changed?
If I may, I am the liaison for the planning board. And when this first came in front of the planning board, that particular night, we were instructed that we had to vote, otherwise we're subject to penalties, if you will. We were not happy at that particular juncture with the overlays. They took some time. We thought the vote was final. It turned out that it was not. My colleague, the mayor, could probably concur that our vote, even though we had to vote yes, it was revised. The overlay map was revised. But some of the areas, same overlays were still affected, and it's still not satisfactory. So I don't know what's going to happen if they get to revise it again, or we have to accept that as a planning board member.
This is not my expertise. I'm not a land use attorney. However, it says that November 2nd, the council adopted the settlement agreement and the court approving it on January 20th. Simple question. Can this body, or the planning board recommend to this body, to change the overlay zones that are currently on Exhibit A?
They can make the recommendation. It will probably turn the settlement agreement on its head, and it'll open the municipality up to builders' remedies lawsuits.
Okay,
That's-
I appreciate that.
And
'cause this-
again, I'm not giving absolutes. This is just
Okay.
what the potential is.
Okay, so the difficulty with this, and I appreciate the indulgence of the council president, this is so substantial that it does not, it's improper, if I may say that, to do this without public participation, without the planning board, who has a legal right and obligations to be informed of this, but more importantly, to be a party to the litigation. exactly what this mayor did in 2014, because the planning board had to be side by side with the council. That hasn't happened. So I'm understanding April 27th, for the first time, they're told, take the map, and if you don't approve it, you have consequences. Forcing the planning board members to breach their fiduciary duty and potentially cause liability to them in the city. This needs to be vetted. And if the consequences are there's exposure on litigation, then that's the result of whoever created these dotted lines. And I'm going to ask, who did the map? Professionals don't do the map, somebody tells them. Now, for the record, to be abundantly clear, I support affordable housing
Excuse
and
me,
the goals.
could you please wrap this up?
I'm gonna wrap it up.
We understand what you're saying.
No. I'm going for the record. I'm going to finish. If you don't, and you want to try to remove me, please do. Okay. To be clear, this is the most important thing. I support affordable housings and the goals established in the agreement. However, and I'm sure the people I spoke to in the first ward, second ward, fourth ward, and third ward categorically oppose the overdevelopment of 4,000 high-density apartments scattered throughout the city in our neighborhoods, in the fourth ward and all wards, including your third ward. You have overlay zones on Center Avenue and Glenwood Parkway. This map, again, with nobody's involvement, but we'll soon find out who did it, has completely gutted the master plan. But more importantly, the master plan was codified. The first time in the history of Englewood that was codified. That's the law that this council and the planning board has to follow. But with a stroke of a pen on an exhibit with no support, no planning opinion, just poof, and rezones the city. I got to tell you, and I'll end with this, the 24 master plan was a full, open, and transparent process. 27,000 people were invited, 2,000 people participated. Your husband was a lead person in it. We communicated with the Avatura meetings, Community Baptist Church meetings, downtown meetings, host other meetings to determine and get it right, because I'm not going to take the position, and I hope Mayor Wiles doesn't take the position, that some elected official in a moment in time has a right to completely change the zoning of this city with no one having any input. And we'll soon find out what's privileged or not privileged, but I will be asking, as of the date the court approved this settlement agreement, everything should be fully disclosed. So I go back, don't waste all of our time. If we're going to say that if there's any comments on this overlay zone, 41 of them. Michael, they're in your ward. Ken, they're in your ward. But there's a lot in your ward. I happen to live near you. Catherine and the council president, there. Charles Cobb. You know, you always said a bunch of things. Look at the fourth ward. So, all I'm simply saying, and I deplore the council and then the attorney, to take a step back, pause. If we have an affordable housing requirement, satisfy it. And the next step, don't gut our city, because whatever litigation that this attorney says may happen, because the council apparently, I don't know if the mayor was involved, we'll find out, made a unilateral decision to sign off on the settlement agreement and went to court. As mayor, when I did the exact same thing, I wouldn't dare go into court without having a public meeting and tell them what we're doing. So there's a real problem here. And make no mistake, once I get more detail in it, my opinion now, which I could be convinced otherwise, my opinion now, constructing 4,000 apartment units in the wrong places will potentially decimate our city as which we know it. And Judy, or Council President, tell me, are you satisfied in having multifamily housing on Central Avenue? And then amazingly, there's 15 unit density, and then some others, I guess, are 50 unit density. There's something radically wrong, and I'm specifically asking for this to be tabled, to refer to the planning board, hire the planners, and just because our government did not do this properly in 2022, there's no reason why this council member should be forced to vote. If I were there, I would have said nobody to vote and go and ask the attorney and the council, why does this occur? These are very serious. And Ken, I don't know what we've ever agreed on. Respectfully, you cannot simply, privately, in closed session, using the excuse of attorney-client privilege, rezone our entire city and completely ignore the master plan, but more importantly, our zoning. That's a process that requires public participation. Again, I appreciate your indulgence, but this is an extremely serious matter, and I hope somebody on this council would understand the ramifications of putting affordable housing on Catherine and Central Avenue. Thank you very much.
I'm not here to complain. My name is Jewel Shears, Forest Avenue, but I do have a complaint because I understand basically what's being said. I live basically a couple of blocks from when they're putting up a 5-story apartment building in a residential area. So basically, like when I spoke to other people, you know, they told me you have to go to the planning board or you have to speak to Gordon Johnson. Nobody did nothing. So what you're having now is a 5-story apartment building. It's going to be in a residential area with a deck, and they're also talking about trying to put cannabis back there also. It's just a complaint.
Are you talking about the Teaneck building?
Whether it's Teaneck, Englewood,
Well,
5
it makes a
stories
difference.
in a residential area. Come on. So this is basically what I'm talking about. You know, who planned this? Who allowed this to happen? We were here basically fighting about it. I spoke to people, and they're still putting it up. 5 stories in a residential area? Who needs this?
Yeah, Rick Wilby, Englewood, New Jersey. I hope you plan to indulge me too, because I'm special myself. You understand? So I don't want to hear shit. I'm straight up. I don't want to hear nothing, okay? Our community was gentrified. I don't understand why, if this is of the magnitude of importance that Mayor Huddle is saying, why is the planning board and the Board of Adjustment still hiding behind Zoom? I completely agree with him. You understand? Englewood cannot withstand 1,000 new developments. It can't withstand 2,000, let alone 4,000. And we feel like we are being pushed out in droves, which we are. There's a plan. And you know, you guys, the word master plan just rolls off your tongues like nothing. The master did have a plan for us. And it affects more people that look like me than people that look like you. But in a minute, they're going to make settlements in your community too. And the very same people that live among you are the ones to blame. They're the ones that pretty much sold you out. So in a minute, you'll understand what it feels like. They say that when you occupy somebody's territory, you ensure that there's going to be resistance. So this is the resistance to these so-called affordable housing, which I told Mr. Hoffman before, that black people need low-income housing. Why don't you guys just say we don't want black people in Englewood? Just say it. Say it, Judy. Let me hear you say it. Just say it. Say, I don't want black people in Englewood. Just go ahead and unburden yourself. It's better that way, because this is what's happening. And then we got to sit here and listen to all this crap. And again, the planning board is hiding behind Zoom. How much longer are they going to hide behind Zoom? These guys are making very important decisions and are hiding behind Zoom. COVID is not as dangerous as the planning board, to me. You understand? Who's in charge here? Why can't the planning board come and have a regular meeting so that I could have an excuse to leave the house and tell my wife I'm going to the planning board meeting? What's going to happen? When are they going to come back into live session? Do you know, Judy? No. All right. Well, something has to give. It's very unscrupulous what's going on here with this so-called affordable housing. The fact that Englewood is being rezoned, and if you pay attention, Judy, what's going on in Englewood very much so has a problem with what's going on in Teaneck. They're pretty much tied together, if you don't know. There's a lot of development happening in Teaneck. People want 11 stories over there. You get these criminal people from New York coming over here that want to develop every goddamn thing. You know what I'm saying? You know, I feel like I'm in Janine someplace or Sheikh Jarrah. where they're gonna come and take my house and develop something on top of it. We need to understand that this community was not meant to sustain what's being built here right now. And the planning board and the Board of Adjustments need to face the people, and they need to understand that the people have a right to at least have a quality of life that they signed. We didn't sign up for this. I keep saying about the gentrification in Englewood, there's not even no place to park. This place is becoming a ghetto, technically. It's worse than when I was a kid. There's people riding up and down the avenue with no helmets on mini bikes. You make a U-turn, there's all kinds of shit going on. It's ridiculous. How much more people are gonna start? We might as well go back, I might as well go back to Harlem. I might as well go back to Kingston, Jamaica. Kingston, Jamaica has a better quality of life than Englewood, New Jersey right now because of greedy politicians like your husband, okay, that sit on the planning board, that make decisions because he's very wealthy because of his real estate investments and other real estate people that build here. And that's what it's all about. It's all about greed. The love of money is the root of all evil, and this is what we're at right now. People want to build, and they don't want black people here. It really affecting us, but now it's going to affect you because you can't break the glass without not picking it up and cutting yourself. And I want to thank you, Judy, because apparently I have to come up here and kiss your butt because to get some time to say how I feel about what's going on in my community, because you don't even know my community, do you? Where's Shepherd Avenue in Englewood?
Are you finished?
I'm not finished. Until you tell me you want black people pushed out of Englewood.
Because we gave Mayor Huddle as much time.
No, I'm not going to take as much time because I'm not a dignitary. You understand? I mean, I'm just a descendant of slaves. That's me. But I want you to say that you don't like black people, especially swimming in the pool over there. Say it.
I think you've said enough. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Come on.
Amy Bullock, Howland Avenue. Peter Jansen issued a comprehensive and substantive report in January of 2023, which, if I'm not mistaken, the entire city council and Mr. Hoffman received and actually had discussions with Mr. and Mrs. Jansen regarding the report that Pete put together. The report targeted construction in FEMA flood areas. And it seems like that has not been taken into consideration, which leads to the next point of how has the failing infrastructure of this city been factored into this agreement and the decisions that are being made? Because we clearly can't sustain what we have today, so another 4,000 units is going to bury us and the entire city will be a sinkhole. And then I'm gonna have to sue. So if someone could talk about how the infrastructure was a part of these conversations and the flood areas that are included in these overlay zones, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Good evening, Catherine Glynn, Central Avenue. I wanted to ask regarding the overlay zones, how the properties and the areas were identified and what criteria was used to determine which properties should fall into these overlay zones. I also wanted to ask if there's a process for residents to be informed that this conversation is even taking place about where they live. And lastly, I'd like to know the difference between, if there is a difference between spot zoning and an overlay zone.
If we don't have anyone else coming up, we'll try to answer what we can. Bob, you or Levi, either one of you want to tackle some of this?
Yeah, I'll start and work backwards through there. Spot zoning and overlay zoning are functionally different. Spot zoning is giving a single developer an opportunity to build something specific. Overlay zoning has been accepted by our courts as an exception to spot zoning in an effort to provide or meet our constitutional obligation to provide for affordable housing. So that's how the courts have differentiated that. I just want to be clear that tonight is not a vote on the overlay zone. Tonight is a vote on the land use, the code that dictates how affordable housing is implemented.
We're not voting.
I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry, it's not a vote on the affordable housing. It's not even really a discussion for tonight. It is something for consideration. I hear everyone's comments. I think that tomorrow night, if you are able to participate in the Zoom call where our planner and our affordable housing attorney are available, I think that would be an important meeting because that will better establish the criteria and the process which this all went through.
Thank you. I neglected to call the general public session closed. Is anybody on the council, do any of you have additional comments? If not, I need a motion to table. What?
If the planner will be able to answer part of that at the meeting tomorrow, but the answer is that the courts only considered part of the infrastructure question. They didn't consider all of it.
Okay, do we have a motion to table?
No questions.
I'm sorry, sir.
I have a question, and it may be too late. I know tomorrow we have a meeting via Zoom, but it appears that this meeting would be better served if everybody were publicly physically. Seems like the public won't feel that they won't have the interaction that they need to have, and based on, you know, the comments that have been made here tonight, and this is a critical topic, and I think sometimes, you know, we have to make sure that not only that we get it, that everybody gets it, you know, so I don't know what we have to do to make it so everybody can come. I know everybody has competing priorities and schedules and things like this, but I would say if we have meetings like this going forward, we should have them publicly.
Yeah, I would just like to piggyback on that. We have been meeting, the council has been meeting publicly all along, you know, from COVID on. The zoning board and the planning board have both been meeting via Zoom. So I believe that the reason the meeting was set up as a Zoom meeting was to accommodate the planning board. This council has been in public. This council has met in public, you know, for whatever, for quite a long time, for the almost 3 years that I've been here. So we are not the ones that set that, and I just want to get that out there so you know that. I don't know if it's too late. We are set for tomorrow night at 7:30. I don't believe at this point we can just change that. Going forward, we will keep that in mind. But as I said, I want to make it very clear, this council has always been here in person for whatever you want to bring to us. Anyway, can we table? Yes.
Yeah. Council President, just as a point of order, I can speak about it now or after
I
you
would
table it.
appreciate it, yes.
Sure. Just so that the council knows and our residents know, there is a large mailing that's going out. It's 1,465 pieces of mail. It's going out. It's basically a 200-foot list for everybody that's near the overlay zone, in or near the overlay zone. So, and what's that? Yeah, inside and outside the overlay zone. So, what's that? I'm just telling you that it's going out to all of the residents there. That's one of the criteria for the court, and we've been working on that. It's being mailed out, regular mail and certified mail. So it's got information about from the court about the affordable housing and the overlay zone. Is there anything else that's in it?
People are throwing around the number 4,000 units. What are they talking about? I'm not aware of 4,000 units. Okay, I'll talk to you after the meeting.
Well, Ms. Marin, if I may.
Yes.
So I'm also trying to get my hand around the fear of 4,000 units. Are they development units? Are they affordable housing units? I don't understand that, but I have to ask the lawyer, and Mr. Hoffman, perhaps with your years of experience in other communities, Aren't there other ways for us to achieve this without an overlay zone? Forget the litigation for a moment. If the city were to own certain properties, can't we mandate affordable housing on property that we own according to percentages that we need and want? We've been very generous with affordable housing, more so than our neighboring communities. Aren't there other more sophisticated ways we can do it that gives us greater control? If it's city property, we can play with the percentages, we can make sure somebody makes a buck, but at the same time, affordable housing is insured. Aren't there more sophisticated ways of doing this than mapping out the city this way?
Levi, do you want me to go first, or do you want to?
Yeah, you can take the lead.
Okay. Yes, there are some other options. I don't know, since we already have a court sanctioned agreement.
Guys.
I'm not sure what.
Gentlemen, please.
Come on, man. Got an officer back there.
Don't ask me about pickleball in the meeting, man. I want to be able to
So depending on where we are in the settlement, there are options that other communities have used. Some communities have built 100% affordable housing units on municipally owned property, and they did that so that they would not have to deal with the affordable with the market rate. So basically, they built the 20% affordable housing units that were designated by the court, and then they were saving, since they didn't have to build the market rates. They looked at it as a way of not having to deal with an increase in population, school-age children, things of that nature, wear and tear on infrastructure. So that's something that some other communities have done, but you need to have the right. You need to have a municipal parcel that you could do that on.
But we could take properties or buy or acquire and then build affordable housing without having to create this overlay. If the overlay creates, and the word settlement is what disturbs, I think, the public, that we're going to use the notion of litigation not to be transparent about how these lines were drawn, and we're going to then create an environment where developers are going to profit on the backs of homeowners. So why just not eliminate that completely? Let the city take property or buy property or use its property and build proper affordable housing and forget the overlay.
Well, you have to do a cost-benefit analysis for that. I mean, that's an option, but the other thing is, if you're buying property, you're also taking it off the tax rolls forever.
I get that,
so
but it's for a different value, a greater good, as it were, so that people can use their sunsetting years in the city that they grew up in and raise their children. So, and I think that that's something we ought to study, rather than being forced because of litigation and fears of less than transparency of continuing this process. In other words, what if the planning board decided tomorrow night that that's what they wanted to do? What happens then? It comes back to the governing body here, and then what? In other words, why not just do this the way Englewood ought to do it? Figure out exactly where we want to do this, where it's going to have the most impact on the quality of life and those people who can't afford and where they should live, that they should be walking distance to pharmacies, to ShopRite, or whatever it is, and then do something that's proper for our community, and the hell with the litigation. Or tell the federal judge we can't have something like this rammed down our throat with the fear of doing anything less than transparent.
Yeah, Mayor, I do want to address something in terms of the context of what the overlay zone does not address. What's called our RDP, our realistic development potential. Those are actual opportunities we have to provide for. The overlay zone addresses our unmet need. There are the calculations that the court uses provides that the municipality has a current obligation of 819 units. We're providing for 70. we're providing for 76 units of realistic development potential. And so those are the other projects that were part of the settlement agreement. That additional obligation has to be addressed. The courts have routinely, or Fair Share Housing Center has routinely mandated that the municipalities do something to address that unmet need. This is the way that they have dictated the
I
courts
understand, but-
and Fair Share Housing.
But Mr. Cool, why not take that balance of 700 and something and just build them someplace else?
Excuse me, Michael. You know, the people that are sitting here, if they listen to you, they think that these people that are sitting up here did nothing. It's not, you know, I think somebody up here has to say, we have had meetings with the planners. We've gone over this many, many times. These numbers that were handed down to us by the courts were not created by anybody sitting here. Mr. Cool, excuse me, Mr. Cool mentioned that we had to identify areas for we needed 819 additional units. We looked at each other and we said, wait a minute, Englewood has got affordable housing. Why can't we get credit for it? And we couldn't, because they were built before, I believe it was 1980. But the implication here, that this group of people doesn't care about this town or wants to have I don't even know where that number comes from, but I will talk to Mayor Huddle. Excuse me, I don't know what you're talking about. I have no reason to say anything but what was. We worked very, very hard so that we could answer the courts. We did not want Englewood to be caught up in a situation where things would be forced upon us. And if we didn't come up with a solution, it would be. So this implication that we had no planners, that we did it haphazardly, this is ridiculous. Now, I really hope that those of you that are complaining will tune into the Zoom meeting and listen to the planners and the attorneys that worked with us and hear how this came to pass. This was not done haphazardly. Excuse me. Listen, bringing up the building in Teaneck, I think it's disgraceful. None of us here had anything to do with the Teaneck structure. Now, all I'm trying to say, though, is it's not fair. I mean, I know fairness is a word that a lot of you may not like using, but what I'm saying to you is we worked very, very hard on this plan. Nobody is saying the overlay was not produced in a vacuum. And I'm repeating myself, I do hope you'll tune in and listen to what actually happened. It's very easy to accuse people of not doing things. That is just not the case. And if you wouldn't mind, could we
Council
get a
President.
motion?
Madam Chair, I have
Yes,
something.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Ken, I have something.
So talking about using municipal property to build affordable housing, which would be a way out of the overlay zone. So we'd need to build about 800 units. So what people know, they know Englewood. The first thing on the list is the Liberty School. Tear it down, put in 300 affordable housing units there. That's what Fair Share Housing wanted. So you're talking about impact on... What's that? So if you don't think the courts can affect our lives and judges can affect the lives of every person in the state, in the city, in this country, you've been living under a rock. Dobbs, all the Supreme Court decisions in the past few weeks. Where have you been? This was a judge who thrust this upon us. You think we wanted this? You know, and a judge can have that power over us. So it's a negotiation. We wanted Liberty School to be for the community, not to build affordable housing and have people from all over Bergen County move in here. It wouldn't even be for people in Englewood. It'd be for people all over Bergen County to come here. So we wouldn't even be building for our own neighbors here who need help. We'd be building for other communities who need help. So please, the apartment building is abomination, but it's a separate issue from this, unfortunately. Teaneck is taking a dump on Englewood there, but this is something for, it was a Teaneck project. It's all in Teaneck. We've been fighting it tooth and nail, but it's a Teaneck project. But this is a separate issue we're talking about with affordable housing. So,
Please, listen, Ken,
okay.
would you please,
so-
yeah,
Okay. Just wanted to.
go ahead,
That's all
Kevin.
I'm saying.
Thank you. Just for clarity, we're tabling this. I think this discussion should have happened months ago. So we all had some input and we knew what was coming down the pipe and we could discuss our displeasures. And part of the displeasures, from what I understand in the phone calls I get, are from the overlays. The judge has some say, but we have a little say as well. One of the overlays, we're sitting in one of the overlays, which is the safety complex. So this is how convoluted the overlay program is. So for us to get a handle on it, we're a little bit behind schedule. I'm sure that prior to, a lot of information was given to the planners, the lawyers, and so forth. It's just unfortunate that we have to table it, and we have to table talking about when the planning board didn't have a choice to vote on this thing. How does the overlaps happen? When we talk about age discrimination, homeless, why we need more green areas to be built. There's a whole host of things that goes along with this affordable housing. And me, for one, I don't like the name affordable housing. I think it should be moderate to low-income housing. But that's something that hopefully we get to work on. And I would like for Bob or maybe Madam President to share with you guys that are watching and that are here how to tune in tomorrow night during the Zoom. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, thank you. You're talking about how to find the Zoom meeting? Is that
Yeah, they
what you're
should be able to
talking
go
about?
on the website, but people have been having complications, as I
Yeah, we've
shared with
been-
the city manager, about people navigating on the new website.
I would hope they would be able to
But
get,
I think what we need to make clear is that, one, and I think Mr. Cool said it earlier, there's no action tonight, and my understanding is hopefully there won't be any action tomorrow night either.
There is no action tomorrow night.
So there won't be any action on these things, on this. So we're gonna take, what I would like to do, and like I would like to request, is that after tomorrow night's meeting, we have a special meeting.
I think that's a very good,
Because obviously, you know, we've been having this conversation, but I guess everybody ain't been paying attention. So now it's house on fire when some people start pointing some things out. But you're absolutely right. I would question why would we approve some zones where there are flood zones, why are we gonna say we put that as an overlay? Can't build there, so why is it even there? Why is it even be considered? But I think that this is an interesting point here, that all of a sudden everybody's attention is like, okay, and nobody wants to be wrong. But now, we've been talking about this for a while. So I'm asking that after tomorrow night that we have a special meeting, and this is the only topic on it.
well,
This
if,
is the only, before we vote, do anything, we need to come to the public and explain to them, chapter and verse, what actions we're gonna take, because of the impact to this community this topic will have.
okay, can I just say that since we're tabling this until July 25th, if we do have a special meeting, it would have to be before then. That's all
I'm
I'm.
okay, whatever, but I think the public deserves to have this
No,
meeting and have that. Yeah.
Ms. Marin, if I
Yes,
may?
go ahead.
I think Mr. Cobb's suggestion is an excellent one. I just want to summarize, if I can, Mr. Cool. Today, the council passed an ordinance, and it'll be sent to me to sign, for the administrative agent. That's ordinance 23-19. we're tabling 2320 till July 25, which is going to talk about the 2.5 and the 1.5 and the 1%. And ordinance 2321, the consolidation of already several sections of ordinance with rent restrictions, rehabilitation, and all those other protocols. All right, these seem required and administrative in nature and not to address any of the concerns for development that have been articulated. The one that is actionable, if anything, is the one that was introduced the last council meeting on June 27th. That's ordinance 2322, the overlay zone itself.
You're absolutely correct, Mayor.
Right, good.
Yeah, these three ordinances that we've discussed tonight,
Right,
they're administrative in function, they do not implement an overlay
and
zone.
I can veto those if I choose to, and they can override me if they choose to, and I get that. The planning board tomorrow is going to be the venue where we get to hear from experts on planning, on affordable housing, I also don't like the word, and also where we get to understand what's happening. To the extent possible, I do want the housing overlay zones and the method and what happened discussed, even though it came out of litigation. It should be, because my move as mayor is going to be to push that the city adopt other mechanisms of dealing with this if it's less than transparent. All I care about here is creating affordable housing to people in their sunset years by law, and that we're transparent who's going to get it and where they're going to get it. I don't need an overlay zone. I don't care, and the formula as to who chose it and how they did it. And this whole thing, Mr. Hoffman, that you spoke about 230 properties surveyed completely by code enforcement. Sometimes they didn't get out of their vehicle. I'm not saying it sounds sloppy, but it just doesn't sound, it sounds rushed.
Well, it's called the windshield survey by the court. They wanted us to
I get
drive
that,
by.
and maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, but we can't take chances on these things. And if we only, and I'm gonna say, if we only have to put in, what was it, 819, and we're given credit for 76 units, and we can come up with another way legitimately to do it without jeopardizing our position in litigation or the threat of development, we ought to figure that out fast. And the question is, do we have a professional there tomorrow evening that can give us that other alternative, Mr. Hoffman? And do we have the inventory of property where the city owns it or could do something with it other than the Liberty School?
I don't know, Mayor, we would have to look at that. I can't answer that question.
Right, now what if
tonight.
we came back and the planning board recommended that we look at that and we divert from the overlay zone? What does the governing body do on July 25?
You know, that's going to be a question for tomorrow night for Mr. Buzak.
I understand, I'm asking the governing body if they want to have a
What the
special
governing
meeting.
body, I believe, agrees on is that we need, Charles's suggestion that we have a public session where we expose all the information we've got and how we came to these conclusions should take place before July 25th.
But it's just the housing overlay zone ordinance, that's
Well,
ordinance
that's what I'm
23-22 that's
I
in
understand
controversy.
that, but believe me, if it had been a simple solution, we would have made it. In the meantime, can I just suggest that, Yancy, can you, we're gonna have to figure out when there is a time that the council can meet with the public to discuss this?
Next Wednesday or Thursday,
Next Wednesday or Thursday?
because then our council meeting's the 25th, the week after.
Yeah, okay.
And I need
What
time
about
to
what about
advertise.
next
I
Tuesday?
need time to advertise.
Okay, so it'd have to be either next Wednesday or Thursday. Could the members of the council please let Yancy know when you're available, if you are available next Wednesday or Thursday, and we'll advertise a public meeting on the overlay zone.
Madam President,
Yes.
perhaps the clerk can alert everybody to how they can access the planning board meeting tomorrow
That
night.
would be great, thank you.
So just for anybody who would like to log into tomorrow's special meeting, if you go on our website under calendars, it has, if you go to the meeting, the July 12th special meeting, click on that, and inside there is the notice. You could click on the link and it'll bring you to the meeting. The meeting is also going to be broadcast to YouTube if you just want to watch, but if you'd like to participate in the Zoom, that would be the link. There will be a public session as part of that meeting as well. So if you want to participate in the public session, the best way to participate is through the Zoom link.
Okay, the Zoom link, go to calendar, go to meetings, and just click on the Zoom link, and hopefully it'll work.
I also would like to state on behalf of the planning board, and there were lots of conversations in the Board of Adjustment too, there are opportunities for people to see all the plans on a Zoom. There is the same right of confrontation, even though it's not a constitutional right, whether it's in person or by Zoom. And there are certain members that have made commitments that they couldn't serve on these boards unless it was at home because of their fear of getting COVID and other things, older people and so forth. So if there was a difference in the quality of the hearing or the disposition, we've done so many different things from the Taylor Bliss House to other things that were real delicate legal issues through the pandemic. It hasn't had an effect on the quality or the result. I believe, and I agree with Mr. Wilson, that this appeared to be forced into the planning board, and that the citizens who have been appointed are very sincere and are not going to do anything less than transparent. And it may derail the July 25 experience for this governing body, in all truth. I, as mayor, don't have the authority to do, to have selected all of these overlays and everything. And if there is another way for us to come to this that meets out some of these issues, we ought to find it.
Thank you. Can we have a motion to table?
I make a motion.
Thank you. Can we, oh, what didn't I do?
I wanted to explain why we were tabling, but we already have a motion
We're-
second. on the
Okay.
floor.
Can we have a second? I'm sorry.
second it.
Thank you, Ken. Roll call?
Sorry, I'm writing. Councilman Kopp?
Yes.
Councilman Rosenzweig?
Yes.
Councilman Wilson?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wasatski?
Yes.
Council President Marin?
Yes. Okay, we're now.
Can we take a 10-minute break?
Yes, okay, we'll take a 10-minute break.